All right, so gather round close. This one's a bit spooky. It was last summer, just over that ridge, a group just like us, you know. They heard it first, a scraping sound, slow, real slow, from deep in the trees. And then the whispering started. Couldn't make out words, just sibilant-like. One of them, he pointed his flashlight out there toward the sound. Nothing. Just blackness. But the whispering, it got louder, almost personal, you know? He swore he saw eyes, just for a second, reflecting the beam back, low to the ground, too low. They packed up fast, real fast, didn't even douse the fire properly, just ran. And the whole time, that scraping, that whispering, it seemed to be following them. So, if you hear anything tonight, maybe, just maybe, keep your flashlights off.
As the initial waves of joy from the hostage releases and aid influx began to settle like dust after a sandstorm, subtle cracks in the ceasefire's foundation emerged by mid-October 2025, testing the resolve of negotiators and families alike, yet underscoring the profound importance of patient dialogue in mending deep-seated divides. In Gaza's bustling Khan Yunis, where community kitchens hummed with the aroma of shared meals for the first time in years, reports surfaced of internal clashes, Hamas security forces addressing long-simmering rivalries with rival groups, a stark reminder of the complex path to stability, prompting U.S. President Trump to issue a firm yet measured call for calm, stating that while such matters were initially permitted for a limited time to maintain order, any escalation would invite swift international cooperation to protect civilians and uphold the peace. This came amid heartfelt accusations from both sides, Hamas pointing to isolated incidents where at least 24 Palestinians lost their lives in what they described as avoidable confrontations near restricted zones, urging restraint to honor the truce's spirit of mutual respect, while Israeli officials, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, expressed unwavering determination to secure the return of every remaining loved one, sharing intelligence with mediators to locate the 19 outstanding bodies amid the challenging terrain of debris and unexploded remnants, a process U.S. envoys described as expected and ongoing, with no breaches in the core commitments. For American audiences glued to CNN updates during evening commutes, this phase highlighted the diplomatic tightrope. Trump's productive phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin on October 16th, yielding pledges for advisor meetings and trade talks tied to regional calm, painted a picture of global teamwork that inspired faith in steady leadership. In the UK, where The Guardian's live blogs sparked tea-time discussions on humanitarian ethics, the narrative struck a chord as a story of cautious optimism, with British pledges for aid funding amid economic reflections evoking parallels to their own post-conflict aid legacies. Heartwarming vignettes continued to shine through the uncertainty, freed Palestinian detainees like Mahmoud Abu Faul, a hospital worker who endured months of hardship before emerging to aid his neighbors, sharing his journey of renewed purpose in interviews that humanized the exchange. Or the quiet efforts of UN teams coordinating with local volunteers to distribute sanitary supplies and water filters, easing daily burdens for women and children in Deir al-Balah and beyond. Trump's ambitious 20-point peace vision, emphasizing demilitarization and international oversight without demanding an immediate Palestinian state, a stance echoed by Netanyahu's cabinet, drew mixed reactions but fueled hope for Phase 2, where enhanced aid corridors and reconstruction funds from allies like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain could transform rubble into resilient communities, provided all parties leaned into good faith collaboration. Even as whispers of concern grew, over aid volumes still feeling like a drop in the ocean despite 600 approved trucks, or the delicate dance around safe zones for those seeking protection from internal tensions, the overarching story remained one of potential, a delicate bloom in arid soil where empathy for the displaced Gazans trekking home with salvaged heirlooms, the Israeli families lighting memorial candles with gratitude, and the aid workers bridging gaps with smiles reminded viewers that true progress blooms from understanding and unity. In this evolving chapter, the world's attention, trending fiercely on X with millions engaging under #Gaza Ceasefire, served as a global embrace, encouraging small acts of kindness that could stitch wounds into wisdom, proving that even amid whispers of worry, the human drive for harmony endures as the most powerful force of all.
In the hush that followed the greatest relief many had dared to imagine, a more complex, uneasy chapter quietly began to unfold across Gaza. Aid convoys did roll in, but not nearly as swiftly or as abundantly as starving families required. According to UN and local humanitarian sources, only a fraction of the promised 600 trucks make it through daily. As of October 16, the flow has been halved, ostensibly due to delays in retrieving and repatriating the bodies of deceased hostages. That scarcity has left entire neighborhoods still trembling with hunger, thirst, and vulnerability. In many areas, hospitals remain shadows of their former selves. Only 13 of 36 medical facilities are even partially operational, straining under waves of malnutrition, disease, and untreated chronic illness. Infectious diseases, especially among children, are already reported as spiraling out of control by the WHO. Meanwhile, the dust-laden air blends with the stench of waiting bodies beneath rubble, as the search teams struggle to access destroyed buildings and navigate unexploded ordnance. Pressure from both sides has also begun to strain the fragile truce. Hamas accuses Israel of killing at least 24 Palestinians in alleged ceasefire violations since the weekend, claims that Israel, in turn, states reflect civilians crossing into restricted zones or ignoring warnings. Israel has responded by halving aid deliveries and threatening further reductions if the body returns do not accelerate. Red Cross officials confirm that locating remains is more challenging than freeing the living hostages, citing dislodged skeletons, mass graves under debris, and severe damage to forensic facilities. On October 15, 4 more coffins were transferred, bringing the known total of returned deceased hostages to 10. Yet amid these strains, Turkey has stepped more boldly into the humanitarian role. Its disaster management agency is now coordinating aid operations in Gaza, dispatching experts to assist in debris removal, shelter setup, and body recovery. Israel has also agreed to let Turkish rescue workers in, a sign of shifting pragmatism on all sides. The Sharm el-Sheikh summit on October 13, attended by around 30 nations and co-chaired by Trump and Egypt's Sisi, produced the symbolic Trump Declaration for Enduring Peace and Prosperity, a gesture toward international backing for reconstruction, governance, and oversight, though critics say its provisions remain vague. Inside Gaza, internal tensions have bubbled up. Hamas has used its security forces to clamp down on alleged collaborators, gang groups, and dissenters, in some cases executing men in public, videos of which have circulated online. These actions, while intended to assert control and deter chaos, risk undermining local trust and fueling fear among civilians who already see little difference between governor and guard. In Khan Yunis, reports surfaced of tensions between Hamas and rival factions over resources, territory, and security prerogatives, forcing President Trump to issue firm warnings that any escalation would invite swift international cooperation. On Israel's side, Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed that Israeli forces will remain in Gaza until Hamas is fully disarmed, and has hinted that any renewed violence could trigger military measures. In his most forceful public statement since the truce on October 16, Trump warned that the U.S. would not tolerate violence, saying, "We will have no choice but to go in and kill them if bloodshed persists in Gaza," though he clarified U.S. troops would not be deployed. The implication hangs over the truce like a dark cloud, that the peace is conditional and vigilance is non-negotiable. For families just returned, these pressures carry personal weight. Freed Palestinians who stepped into their neighborhoods in ruins described scenes that felt apocalyptic. Shadi Abu Sido, a photojournalist released from Israeli detention, said he entered Gaza and found it to be like a scene of Judgment Day. One released prisoner learned, upon returning, that his children had died in the conflict, the joy of freedom turning instantly into fresh grief. Meanwhile, over 67,000 Palestinians are confirmed dead, a toll echoed by Gaza's Ministry of Health. Israeli tallies put the hostage count at 1,144, though some remain unreturned. Yet amid all this brokenness persists a fierce current of resolve. In Khan Yunis, women gathered in coastal camps to rebuild community kitchens. Displaced children played near crumbling walls as UNICEF teams taped up tent walls. Doctors and volunteers reopened clinics in makeshift settings, stitching wounds in lantern light. In Sharm el-Sheikh's corridors of power, donor pledges poured in, billions for reconstruction, corridors for fuel and water distribution, plans for new governance and transitional security forces. Church leaders in Jerusalem and across the Holy Land issued statements of hope and resolve, calling the ceasefire a resurrection of life from grief and pleading the world not to forget Gaza's people. This is not yet a peace. It is a fragile interlude, a breath caught between two storms. But it is a space, however narrow, where the living may yet rebuild, the dead may be returned, and the human heart, in its quiet tenacity, might whisper possibility.
As night settles over Gaza's shattered skyline, lanterns flicker in doorways rebuilt from debris, and voices once silenced by war rise softly in prayer, laughter, and music. The ceasefire may tremble, the politics may shift, but the human spirit, that fragile, unbreakable light, still burns through the darkness. From the children chasing footballs in empty streets, to the mothers cooking shared meals from donated rice, each act of hope becomes a quiet defiance against despair. The story of Gaza is no longer only about conflict. It's about courage, compassion, and the world's responsibility to protect peace when it finally dares to bloom. If this story moved you, if you believe humanity's voice must never fade, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to EchoingChroniclesYT for more real stories that echo across nations and hearts. Your support helps keep these voices alive, reminding the world that even in the darkest places, light still finds a way. Earth, peace.